my office received an hour ago. Would you like to discuss that here, Mr. Pierce, or at a formal hearing? He stepped back, reaching for his phone. Oh, and Pierce? Elena added. Tell your board's members that if anything happens to James Washington, every news outlet in California will have copies of what he found by morning. Margaret's heart leaped. James was alive. The next few hours passed in a blur. The letter was retrieved, her few belongings packed. Through it all, Elena stayed close, her presence keeping the circling corporate lawyers at bay. It wasn't until they were settled in Elena's study, a pot of proper tea between them, that Margaret finally heard the full story. James made it to my office around noon, Elena explained. The safety deposit box was empty, but he'd had the foresight to check the bank's historical records. What he found... She shook her head. Margaret, this goes far beyond Elizabeth's inheritance. She spread photographs across her desk, copies of documents James had discovered, bank transfers, corporate minutes, death certificates. Thomas Hamilton didn't die in 1985, Elena continued. He was killed, and the people responsible are still running Hamilton Enterprises today. Margaret's hands shook as she lifted one photo. It showed a young woman holding a baby, Elizabeth and her mother. But it was the background that caught her eye, a familiar tea set on a shelf behind them, the same tea set her mother had brought from Shanghai. My mother, Margaret whispered. She was Elizabeth's nanny, that's why. Memories cascaded through her mind, her mother's insistence on keeping the tea set despite their poverty, the mysterious payments that had helped fund Margaret's college education. Your mother protected Elizabeth, Elena confirmed. And when Elizabeth grew up, she returned the favor. Those weren't random college funds, Margaret. She was watching over you. Mrs. Patterson, Margaret's voice cracked. All those years in the nursing home, she must have known who I was. She did, and she left you more than just a letter. Elena pressed a button on her desk phone. Send him in. The door opened, and James Washington entered, looking exhausted, but alive. He carried a laptop. Show her, Elena instructed. James opened the computer, revealing a video player. On screen, an elderly woman's face appeared, Mrs. Patterson, but alert and clear-eyed, recording this message in her final days. Hello, Margaret, Elizabeth Hamilton Patterson began. If you're watching this, then you've found my father's letter, and more importantly,